Hello and welcome back to Two Spot Monkeys Live. I almost said good morning. We do that every week, and yet we still do it. I am Jim, and I am joined as always on this October day. It is crazy to think we're already in October. But Tom, how are you doing?
I'm awesome. Welcome to spooky season.
Spooky season, that's right. It's, everything went pumpkin spice last month, and now everything goes into skeletons and bats and witches for the next month. And then, a month from now, everything goes to Christmas because, hey, there's no holiday in November. Oh, wait. Anyways, that can be my rant. Maybe later in the month. Although I did see all the Christmas things at Walmart last night and thought, really? It's September 30th. Come on. That's a different...
on December 26th, you can expect to see Valentine's.
That's very true. Very, very true. My quick, totally non-wrestling related story. My mom once handed out chocolate Santa Clauses for Halloween candy because when she went to buy Halloween candy on Halloween day, there was like nothing left because it had been all picked over but all the Christmas candy was out. And I was like, the worst part is the kids all think you're a cheap and this is all chocolate Santas from last year. Like they're not realizing these are brand new. They think these are 10-month-old chocolate Santas. So
I promise they're fresh. I promise.
Right. Like they're never coming back to your house. You always mark who gives out the full size candy bars. And then you also mark out like, no, not going to that house. Don't even make Santa Claus. It's bad. Tom, we don't have a huge schedule for today's podcast. In fact, we're calling it Freestylin Monkeys because we're just going to kind of talk about whatever. But we got two things we want to hit real quick before we get into just wherever the conversation might lead us. And one is today, when we're recording this, depending on when you're listening to it, it might be a different day, but it's October 1st, 2021. And this is 10 years now since October 1st of 2011, which was a not great day for Tom and I and a group of our friends. We lost a guy named Paul Kurtzman, who actually was a wrestler. He worked for a short time and was known as Robin Von Trapp. And we lost him 10 years ago today, suddenly to a heart attack. And it was shocking. I had just seen Paul a month before at a trip in Vegas with a bunch of our friends. Katie had a chance to meet him and realize what a great guy he was. But we miss Paul a lot. And I just thought we could take a second, maybe talk about, I don't know, when did you first meet Paul, Tom?
Great question. Yeah, great question. I don't know. I probably somewhere in the 07, 08 range. I definitely know that he was gracious and opened his house for me and some others in 09. I know that I went out for the Final Countdown tour, the Boston area show that had Danielson and Richards. Funny story about that. I was way up in the bleachers. It was in like a college gym, and we had driven straight from Michigan to Massachusetts and like on little sleep. And this was pre me being a coffee drinker. So I wasn't using coffee as a stimulant to try to stay awake. I was dozing off during that main event. And I think that was like almost like a 40-minute match. So funny story there. It was a good match, but it's the one time I believe ever at wrestling that I've dozed off. But I was just so comfortable up in GA. But we stayed at Paul's house that night. And then the next night was the final match of Nigel and Danielson in Ring of Honor for their first go round in 09. So that was September of 09. So that wasn't the first time I met him. I'm pretty confident because I was out to New York City and the East Coast shows where we would have probably connected before that. But that's just a fun story. And again, how gracious he was, and his wife, Julie, as well, just open their house and just providing a spot to sleep and lay your head and being so courteous and gracious. And I remember having breakfast the day of that Saturday show before we ventured down to New York City.
Yeah. I met Paul in December of 2006. I was just doing my research here really fast to get the right year. When Homicide won the Ring of Honor World title at Final Battle, I went out to New York. It's the only time I have been to New York for a wrestling show. I've been to New York a couple other times, but went totally on my own just to go for the show. Sat front row in the Manhattan Center and watched Homicide win the world title. Met Paul and Larry and a bunch of the other East Coast guys who I hadn't met before, or if I had, it was in passing. And then just we became fast friends after that, and stayed in touch. And one of my favorite memories with Paul is the Phoenix WrestleMania. So WrestleMania 26 in 2010. So literally just, little over a year before his passing, year and a half before his passing, we were in Phoenix. Tom, were you in Phoenix?
Was not. Remember, that's the place of the famous I'm in a photo, but I'm invisible with you and our friend Chris.
That's right. At the Grand Canyon. Yes, that is true. That is true. That's right. That should have been my memory I was trying to remember you. So you were in Atlanta, but you weren't in Phoenix.
Correct. And Atlanta was the year after, correct?
No, because Paul was in Atlanta. Oh yeah, that which would track. Yeah, that was probably right then. Because Paul didn't pass until October, so yeah, he probably was in Atlanta. In fact, he was. He was.
No, I know he was in Atlanta. I was trying to remember if Atlanta was.
It was because Paul and I talked in Atlanta about that I had met Katie and we were together, and I was thinking, it was going to be a lasting kind of thing, and here we are in 2021, and I'm married to the woman, so clearly I was right on that. And that was when we talked about that he would. I asked him if he would consider coming to the wedding, and he graciously said absolutely, he would love to come. And unfortunately, we got married in wait, let me say this the right way. Unfortunately, he passed in 2011, and we got married in 2012. That almost sounded the way when I flipped those words. So unfortunately, he wasn't able to be there, although he was on our memory table. You probably remember seeing that, Tom, since you were there at our wedding, standing with me. So. But anyways, one of my favorite memories was the Phoenix WrestleMania. He and our friend Larry and I went to a Cubs spring training game. We bought like lawn seats, but we got there a little bit late because traffic was crazy, and we were probably doing 10 other things too. And we really just walked around the ballpark. I don't think we ever sat down, and we were only there for, I don't know, maybe the second half of the game. But just walking around, talking baseball, wrestling, life. We have I have a picture, and I'll have to see, it's probably in my Facebook somewhere, of Larry, who wasn't always known as a rule follower, standing right by a sign that says no standing allowed, standing there like with his arm in the air cheering, and Paul looking at him like sideways, like, what is this guy doing? I don't know. It was just fun. And then, like I said, Katie and I got to see him what ended up being a month before his passing. And that is probably my favorite Paul story. And maybe I've shared it on the podcast before. And if I have, I apologize. But the whole group of us that were in Vegas went to the Paris to their buffet for brunch one day. Our friend Greg was graciously hosting us all and took us all to this buffet. And it was great. Buffets in Vegas often are really, really good. And it was. And with the buffet came unlimited mimosas. So just drink to your heart's content. Well, they brought out these big, and anybody who's listening to this on audio, you can't see my hands, but big like soda cups of orange juice for everybody. And then they just set bottles of champagne all over the table. And they just kept coming back with more bottles of champagne as we drink them. And so you just kind of mixed your own, basically. And so they had these big, 30-ounce cups, 25-ounce cups, whatever, of orange juice. So you drink down some of the orange juice, then you pour in the champagne and, go to town. Well, we were at the end of this long table with, 15 to 20 of us having this brunch. And Paul was at the end, I think against the wall, if I remember right. I was sitting next to Paul, and then Katie was on my left. So I was sitting between Paul and Katie, and then everybody else was beyond Katie. So while Paul and I would be talking, I also would often be turning to my left, talking to other people within the group. And I kept thinking throughout the breakfast or the brunch that I knew I was drinking my mimosa, but it never seemed to get empty. Well, I caught him one time as I turned around. Every time I would turn to the left, he was taking the champagne bottle and pouring more champagne into my mimosa and refilling it. So by the end, I was just drinking glasses of basically champagne, I think, and just a little bit of orange juice. I struggled with walking out of the Paris that morning, or early afternoon. I was stumbling just a little bit by the time I left, all due to my good friend Paul. So I never got to stay at his house. I never got out on the East Coast for that. So I wish I could have, but.
Well, and I envy that story, and I envy the fact that you got the opportunity to be with him so close. This won't sound right, but I think I'll explain it better as I kind of talk about my kind of last memory of him. I'm envious that you got to be with him so close to the end of his life, not because you knew that was the case, but just because he was a pleasure to be around and just an all around great guy. So for me, again, it was seeing him last and being with him last in Atlanta earlier in that year. It's a good reminder, and a sobering reminder, like that nothing is promised tomorrow. Like this could be the last time that we talk on this podcast. We don't know what today has in store for us, Jim. So with that, I think that it's important that we be reminded to maximize the time that we have with those that are important to us and special to us. And I know that we are doing that by honoring Paul with our stories today. My memories just from Atlanta, there was a busy week. I remember flying out and being a little bit under the weather, but then just like wanting to be in every moment that I could be that weekend. I think it's Little 5 Points is the name of like the borough, for lack of a better term, in a suburb of the Atlanta area. And I remember being with Paul and I want to say Robbie, and I know Josh Tree, maybe a few other people. And we just went and we had beers out on a patio. And I remember like learning about sour beers for the first time because of Paul. And never at that time did my palate enjoy a sour beer at all. But now whenever I do enjoy a sour beer, which my taste has evolved, and I do enjoy them now and again, I always think of him whenever I have a beer that's a sour in its format or its design. So I will be raising a beer tonight in honor of Paul. I think we're going to do a fire here in our backyard because it gets October, so we get those cool temps when the evening comes. So just grateful to have time to just think of him this morning. And it popped up in my memories that a year after he passed, I had a couple of beers in honor of him. And hard to believe 10 years has gone by.
Yeah, that part is absolutely. I remember where I was when our friend Greg called us, and I don't want to go down that story because it was such an awful evening, as we all learned. But Paul loved a good beer, and by good beer I mean usually craft, not Bud Light, Miller Lite, Coors Light, whatever. A good beer. And he loved hot dogs. That was also a love of his, was a good hot dog. There was a place in Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, where I used to work, that opened they were only open about a year, but they had Chicago dogs and different things. He would have loved Yesterdog had he ever made it out to Grand Rapids. So I always try to, the rare times, I don't eat a lot of hot dogs, but the rare times if I do get a chili dog or something like that somewhere, think of Paul, and definitely craft beers, which I get to have a little more often now, doing my trivia gigs at breweries often. So think of him often. So we miss you, Paul. We'll dedicate this episode of Two Spot Monkeys to you, which you would laugh at and be like, come on, whatever. The one regret I have, other than obviously just Paul not being here, that's the main regret. But the one regret I have is I've never been able to locate, and I know there are some of his matches were taped, and I think he even did enhancement work once or twice maybe for WWF. And I've never been able to locate a Robin Von Trapp match. And I would. Well, then
you have to get a projector out then, and it's hard to lace that film into the other reel.
That's very true.
And so I know he's smiling as I make that joke.
And nodding his head. So
talking about hot dogs, and this is not even a good transition, but it's just interesting. A few weeks back, I heard, and I don't know if I have not done the research on this, but apparently there was a study done that for every hot dog you eat, it takes like 33 minutes off your life. Did you hear that at all?
Well, then I must have been projected to live to be about 140 because I'm still here. So
I just thought it was very funny, but then and again, I think about the hot dogs I ate as a kid, and then now as an adult, like really we try to have all beef dogs or very kosher dogs. But you're at the ballpark, you can't guarantee that, right?
Right.
So
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, in the summer at a ball game, you got to have a hot dog, right?
Well, could you imagine the autopsy? Oh well, cause of death: too many hot dogs.
Too many hot dogs, right? Clearly ate too many hot dogs. Oh, what a way to go, though! If you had to, I guess so. Well, I don't know how to pivot off of hot dogs, but we'll do that. And just talk quickly about Tom, who can hot dog. There we go. 6-0 at Extreme Rules, including nailing the reason for Bianca winning her match. It was a DQ. Didn't necessarily nail how the DQ happened, but I don't think you tried to predict that either. You just predicted a DQ, but nailed that absolutely. So 6-0. I went 5-1, missing the Becky and Bianca match, which puts then. Oh, I had it open, but Tom's got a 1-match lead.
Yes, I am now the EST of the PICKEM. 45-10 is where I'm
that
at.
didn't roll nearly as well as you hoped it would.
I don't care. It's
freestyling.
Yeah, this is the freestyle episode. So we're gonna throw things out, and if it sticks, great. If it doesn't, well, we'll come back next week. So 45-10 for me, 44-11 for you. So finally some movement. It's not been much movement on either of our sides. It's really been like a 1-match difference at any point since we restarted this in July. So that's interesting. And next up, I think for us, most likely it's Crown Jewel. If not Crown Jewel for some reason, then Full Gear, which I think Full Gear, and again, I'm not advocating one way or the other, but I know Full Gear will be a great discussion for us to have. And I can't wait for Full Gear. It's back on a Saturday, I believe. I think so. Yes. I think that's correct. I'm actually quite bummed because if you're watching our podcast in the simulcast version this week, you see I've got my Michigan hat on. Michigan football is playing great. That day is actually going to be Michigan Penn State. I have a very good feeling that's going to be a night game in Happy Valley. Both teams should be highly rated, I believe, when we get to that point. So that's going to compete with my ability to watch Full Gear because I love wrestling and I also love Michigan football. So decisions.
Well, this weekend is a big Michigan game as they play my Wisconsin Badgers. So it's a big football weekend for you and I. Our college teams play and our pro teams play. And I would not be shocked if I am 0-2 at the end of this weekend. So I am putting absolutely no bet on the line in those football games with you because I'm not feeling good about either one of my two teams right now. So, and Michigan has looked pretty decent. It'd be nice to see them finally live up to the expectations I think that have been there since Jim Harbaugh took over. And I say that as a Harbaugh fan. I'm a Bears fan, so I followed Harbaugh for a long time. But I think one of the knocks on him has been, if you really look at it, he hasn't gotten Michigan to the level that I think everybody thought he might. They've been competitive at times, but not competing for the titles and things like that. They haven't been in the playoffs.
In the Big Ten championship picture. Hasn't defeated Ohio State. Has struggled against in-state rival Michigan State. No college football playoffs. Excuse me, as you mentioned. All of those are kind of indicators, in the college football landscape of success or not success. So,
right.
Yeah. Your name's going to get you so far.
Absolutely. Because there's a lot of people that think the Bears ought to go after him after they get around to firing Nagy here, in the next few weeks, which should happen. 47 total yards, you lose your job. Sorry. Anyways, not a football podcast, right? Well, it's freestyling, so you never know. Could be a football podcast today. But so anyways, a lot of people think he maybe could come. He just signed a long extension with Michigan. He ain't going anywhere. So anyways, Full Gear on a Saturday. They want to avoid Sunday Night Football, it sounds like. And then they actually had moved it 1 week because they wanted to avoid the big UFC pay-per-view that's going on that weekend as well, which is smart, actually. I think that's really smart by AEW to not, on the pay-per-view channel side, to be up against UFC doesn't make a ton of sense for the actual people who buy it on pay-per-view through cable. Although I don't know, you can't actually, now they say you can't buy UFC that way anymore. You have to buy it through ESPN Plus. So I haven't bought a UFC pay-per-view in maybe 10 years. It's been quite a while there. But anyways, smart, I think, to not split your audience and try to maximize when you are running your shows. So neither one of us saw Extreme Rules. We know what happened, but I do want to go back at some point here and watch the end of the Roman Reigns Finn Balor match, because it sounds like it got a little wonky with the heartbeat and Finn apparently like flinching a lot. And then Finn went into like unbeatable mode, and then the rope broke. So Roman Reigns and God made his return to team up with Roman Reigns and turn on Finn Balor, apparently. We haven't seen God since he teamed with Shawn Michaels. So there he is back in WWE. I don't know.
It's hard to negotiate that contract.
I mean, got some leverage. I think the big guy does. So I don't know. Yeah. Not a lot we can say about Extreme Rules, so we're not going to, because neither one of us saw it. So in some ways, it's not fair to say anything about it. I will say I watched the first hour and a half, so we'll just move into freestyle. So this is our episode today, is we're just going to talk wrestling, and it might be about current, it might be about past. So get ready, squirrel, rabbit hole, all sorts of things. If you like a really tight, following a schedule style podcast, I have no idea why you chose to listen to us anyways, because we're not really good at that. But B, this is probably going to be your episode. This is going to be two friends just talking wrestling and hopefully entertaining you along the way while we do it. What was I saying? Oh, I saw the first hour and a half of Raw. I would like to go back and watch the last hour and a half at some point if I have time. I still have to finish AEW from this week. I haven't seen NXT from this week. Although I know the results of NXT. And I'm not sure I even have access anymore to Raw, because I have YouTube TV and they are in a pissing match, for lack of a better word, excuse my French, but with NBC Universal, and I may have lost access to USA and NBC and all of that this morning. Their contract ended yesterday, so I haven't heard that they came to an agreement. And what I've learned with YouTube TV after a free HBO preview weekend last weekend is anything I had recorded on HBO during that free weekend, I no longer have access to, because I don't have access to HBO. So I'm assuming that's going to be the same with USA if that disappeared. So I don't know if I have the access to the last half of Raw now. There are ways to find it, I realize, on the internet, but
you mentioned. Yeah, that's what I wanted to get to. So you mentioned that you had seen that and you thought that the first hour and a half was enjoyable. I literally have gotten to the point on Raw where the intros for the first match have happened, and then I just stopped. It's been a really busy week on my end, so I've not seen a lot of wrestling. So again, we might not talk a lot of current. I think so. I want to hear about your opinion on Raw for what you have seen, because I may get to that today, I may not. The other part about that is, we both acknowledge very clearly that we just weren't super drawn to watching Extreme Rules. Heading into this weekend, today specifically, October the 1st, the WWE draft kicks off. So I think that's an important thing to talk about. I don't know that we can provide maybe any opinions or thoughts, because I maybe, and I don't want to speak for you. I know that I can't. I don't know that I have thought enough about the roster, about moving parts, but I hope that opposite of that, I hope that the draft does shuffle the deck enough that I can get a spark back to be interested in WWE, because I'm just not feeling that right now, and it's weird.
Yeah. So talking about Raw first, and then I'd love to chat about the draft, because I think it's always interesting to see, and I think we've kind of talked about that before. So we'll talk about that in a second. I wanted to watch, or I started to watch, because I had a little bit of time on Tuesday morning, or whenever it was, and thought, oh, well, that recorded last night. Let's throw it on and see. And I knew that Big E and Bobby Lashley were leading off the show. I had seen that was going to happen. So I thought, oh, that'd be a good, that's a good match. And I think Bobby Lashley has been handled really, really well. And then Big E, I think has been handled pretty well since he won the title. Although the whole, he didn't have a match at Extreme Rules until they set it up during the kickoff show for a 6-man. Kind of dumb, but at least they got him on the show. I mean, they at least fixed it and got him on the show. Would I have loved to see the title match? Sure, but maybe a 6-man was better just to not, if you were going to do Big E and Lashley on Monday, then at least you didn't do it on Sunday and Monday, which they've done a ton of that in the past. So kudos for doing that. They also got AJ and Omos then on the show and Kofi and Xavier. So that was good. It ends in a little bit of a cluster, but whatever, which sets up then the main event, which I haven't seen yet. Obviously, I know what happens, but I know who wins in the main event. But the other piece that I really wanted to see was I had read online, because I really wasn't trying to avoid spoilers for Raw, because it wasn't like I was dying to see the show, that Keith Lee had re-debuted or returned or whatever you want to call it, under this new persona, Keith Bearcat Lee, which, first of all, that doesn't flow off the tongue at all. Bearcat Keith Lee would flow a little better if you just moved the nickname to the front. My guess is give it a couple of weeks and he'll just be Bearcat Lee, and then give it a few more weeks and he'll probably just be Bearcat. Because, we can't have anybody with 2 names. So, and I don't know how we're going to keep 3 names. So that's not going to happen. I liked the re-debut. I liked, he was a monster, a little heelish, not full-fledged, didn't do anything illegal or anything like that, but definitely an edge to him. And I think he probably will wind up a heel here for a while, which is fine. Guy that size works as a heel, not a problem. They booked him for 1 week. For 1 week, we'll see what they do. For 1 week, they booked him the way I think Keith Lee ought to be booked, as dominant, strong. He threw Akira Tozawa about 67 feet in the air at one point. I mean, and it was a good opponent for him too, even though it was like a 2-minute squash. Tozawa can bump his butt off. So, and he did. So I loved it. And man, if they can get behind Keith Lee, they can make him a star pretty quick if they get behind him right. And for 1 week, they've done right.
I can't wait to watch that match. There was a cool, I think, digital exclusive promo that he did after Raw. I don't know if you caught that at all. That's worth checking out. His delivery is a little bit different, so you can see the perhaps new character, for lack of a better term. Thinking just about that match, again, freestyle. Think about if we could get Keith Lee versus Akira Tozawa in PWG. Like
you'd be a 2-minute squash. It'd be an awesome match.
Right. I just imagine that, like, those two talents, and like what and this is a good juxtaposition, I think, in terms of, AEW tonight on Rampage is going to give us Bryan Danielson and Nick Jackson, which is I can't wait. I have no idea what happens. I just can't wait. Like, that is going to be fantastic.
And kudos to AEW so far, and I think we've said this before, Rampage doesn't feel lesser than, even though it's taped. And I avoid reading the spoilers. Like, I know what matches are coming, because they do a really great job of advertising what matches are coming. But I don't read the spoilers, which is funny, because in the past, when like WWE would tape SmackDown, I would always read the spoilers. Other Ring of Honor would do a TV taping, I would read the spoilers, whatever. I don't read the Rampage spoilers because I want to see what happens on the show kind of organically. So you've seen Rampage from last week, I assume?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So I had seen that Homicide showed up. Was that Rampage? Yeah, it was Rampage.
It was. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
The shows blend together for me. I've said that before. I got to stop that excuse, but it's the only one I got. I had seen that he showed up. I didn't know for sure where, but I mean, the minute I saw that he showed up, I figured it was probably involving the Eddie Kingston and Moxley match. Made the most sense. Doesn't look like he's in AEW, at least from what I've seen. They did not really follow up on that piece of it on Dynamite. So I don't think he's in. I think it was just kind of a New York thing, which is fine. But so I had seen that, but I didn't know anything else about spoilers.
But that right there, that, and we've said this before, or I've at least had this thought before. So if I haven't articulated it here, let me go ahead and either state it for the first time or restate it. This is about Tony Khan's appreciation of the history of professional wrestling. And I don't want to say that it's only Tony Khan, but I really feel like Tony Khan is where the buck stops, right? So him understanding, and whether there's people advocating or not, the pop that Homicide would get and the importance for Homicide and in the big picture of the story of pro wrestling, like without boundaries, right? And I know we were going to talk about something on Dynamite that neither of us have seen, but around that topic of just the story and the extension of what could be from matches and from outcomes in wrestling. So having Homicide be there, his history with Eddie Kingston, I think that was actually right before that. It aired the night he actually had his match. Homicide had his match with Suzuki. Yes. For GCW. Now there wasn't any cross promotion, and I understand that. But Homicide had like music and had an entrance. Like his name was on the rampway. I don't know if you caught that. But then he came in through the audience. So kind of interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought it was awesome. It was awesome. And I agree with you. Danielson, Nick Jackson, I'm looking forward to that. So
yeah, and I didn't make the point of just going, AEW is giving you matchups that are going to be good in-ring matches, and they're giving the people time. So again, I understand.
And still telling stories along with it.
Precisely, yeah.
It doesn't have to be either or. Yeah. Too bad Akira Tozawa is treated as as comedy fodder, in WWE. Absolutely. Right. Tozawa we know Tozawa is a great worker. He is also a good character. He's a good comedy. He's funny. You can actually do both. But you have to make a commitment to doing it, and you have to give him enough serious stuff to make it mean anything. Yeah. To go to the draft, we kind of touched on that. I love the draft episodes. I love, maybe it's because I love like one of my favorite parts of our fantasy wrestling league is the draft. One of my favorite parts of fantasy football is the draft. I love the NFL draft. I don't pay attention to baseball draft or basketball or anything, but football. So maybe that's part of why I always have enjoyed the draft.
You left out the NHL draft, Jim. I want to just call you out on that.
That's true. I did leave them out mainly because I forget they're a sport. Sorry to all our hockey fan friends. I don't know. I've never, my family has never been into hockey. And I didn't ever have friends that were super into it. So I just never got into it. It's not that I don't enjoy it. We have a local, they're in the USHL team. They're like 16, 17-year-old kids, but they're like the prodigies. They're the good players who are moving, through the system. And they play in the town, the big town near us here. And I worked for a short while for the arena there. And so I enjoy, a live game now and then. I don't understand all of the rules. Sometimes they blow the whistle and send people into penalty boxes. And I'm like, I don't even know what they did. But that's okay. So I did leave hockey out. Sorry. But I love drafts. My problem with the WWE draft in the past is sometimes, and we talked about this, I think, a little last week, they move so many people that it just, all you do is change from, that thing was happening on Friday, now it happens on Monday, or it happened on Monday, now it happens on Friday. And so it doesn't shuffle the deck, like you said. I think if you leave your champions where they are on SmackDown or on, I think they will, although you could flip them, but I don't know. My gut is Fox wants Roman Reigns to stay on Fox. My gut also says USA wants Fox or wants Roman Reigns on their show instead. But if you leave the champions where they are, I could see like Drew McIntyre going to SmackDown. I think he's done about all he can on Raw. Well, yes, we've seen Drew and Roman in the past. It's been a while, so that could get revisited down the road. I don't know where Keith Lee ends up. I think Keith Lee could be an early pick, though. And if they want to actually strap a little bit of a rocket to him and make him, dangerous and seen as a force, then please don't wait and draft him on WWE.com after the shows. Make him an early pick, like they did with the NXT call-up of Finn Balor a number of years ago in the draft, where he was like the number 3 overall pick, I think. That immediately and he came in and won the Universal title 3 or 4 weeks later, and unfortunately got hurt. We all know the story, but that made Finn Balor immediately important. Well, you have somebody like Keith Lee who's just returned. You could make him very important very fast if you want to. It can be interesting to see it. There's a lot of rumblings that there will be a number of NXT names that get revealed in the draft. A number of the women I heard on probably Sean Ross Sapp earlier in the week, I think, on one of his audio shows that I'd listened to, kind of thought that like Aaliyah, Dakota Kai, maybe even Frankie Monet, which would be quick for her, but she can do it. She absolutely should be on the main roster, probably too. I feel like there was at least one. Oh, Xia Li, because she seems to have disappeared from the Tian Shaw thing, which is really weird, and I think hurts Tian Shaw massively to not have Xia Li as the focal point of that anymore. But that's another story. I think LA Knight, we talked about that before. I think LA Knight probably gets moved up. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see from NXT who moves up. I wish NXT, though, and I know I heard this on a Fightful thing, and I've been thinking it, though, too. I wish they were involved in the draft. I wish they could draft as well. I know we've gone back to them being more of a developmental rather than the third brand, although you'd have people in WWE that argue they're still just the third brand and they're not developmental. It's crap. If you watched what they've done over the last couple of weeks, it's clearly gone back to being developmental. And that's okay, but just name it. Don't try to tell me it's something it's not. I just think it'd be cool because I think there are people who could gain value going to NXT and working in even in the new 2.0 system or whatever. But you need some people there that matter so that when somebody beats them, it matters. It's the Tommaso Ciampas of the world. When a new guy, Braun Breaker perhaps, beats Ciampa for the belt, that'll matter. If Braun Breaker beat Von Wagner for the NXT title, okay, I don't care. That doesn't build Braun Breaker, and I'm just using him as an example, and that's still the worst name ever. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see in the draft. I enjoy the draft, but I agree with you. Like, we've done some picks before in the past in our group of friends, like, hey, list the rosters. How do you think the draft's going to shake out? Get a point for everyone you're right. Nobody has thrown that up in our group of friends, and I don't think anybody's even thought about it because, I don't know. We'll see what they do. But I'm open to catch some of SmackDown tonight and see how that works out. Yeah,
what I wish, and again, I know that's a dangerous word when I talk about the WWE and my wishes. I don't want to advocate for like figurehead characters, but I almost wish that each show had an established GM and would actually say, here's what I'm drafting for. Here's the type of wrestlers or talent or product or whatever terminology they want to use that we want to focus here on SmackDown or on Raw. I think that would actually behoove the product in a positive way to get people to go, I want to get behind Raw because they focus on X or SmackDown focuses on Y. That's the thing that's missing, I think. And again, I'm belaboring an overall point in terms of the big picture of WWE. They don't perceive that fans like us want that when we actually do. And you're getting it with AEW. You're getting concerted efforts and concerted visions, and then you're able to care about it, right? And so by caring about something, you invest more in it. Again, if you've listened at all to us or me specifically here the last month or so, I'm just not caring enough about the WWE. Let's see if that changes.
Yeah, and they've got the opportunity. They've always had the opportunity to make a change.
Yeah, it's a scripted story. Like you can write this script. It's reality, but it's also not reality. So you have control.
It's the I'll use the UFC as an example. The UFC can do a great build to a match, and the match might suck. There's nothing they can do about that. That just can happen. The NFL, you could build up this huge game on a Sunday night or even a Super Bowl or something, and the game could just be a dud.
Yeah,
there's people that think the NFL is fixed, but let's leave that for another day.
No, if the Bucks boat race then the Patriots this coming Sunday, that's so first thing this morning.
Will, by the
way. Right. But first thing this morning on the Today Show, they I don't know why they're bringing in sports as much as they are, but they did, and they highlighted like that the Bengals got the walk-off field goal to win last night, and now they go all eyes shift to Sunday. Now, granted, it's self-fulfilling because it's on their channel, it's on NBC. Right. But again, it's all about Brady's return to New England. If they go out and they win 45-10, no one's going to be surprised. But if that type of game happens, there's not a lot of tune-in factors. So they're going to have to focus on the story of Mac Jones. Can he live up to Tom Brady's shadow? Tom Brady coming back home, Bill Belichick, all these other things, right? So again, you have to have another hook for people to want to tune in.
Right. And like you said, in WWE, you literally get to script it. You don't have to. You don't have to script a 45-10 game. You can script a walk-off, kind of thing, a back and forth battle, or sometimes you want to script the 45-10, the Keith Lee, Akira Tozawa's matches. But again, you're doing that for a reason. That's not the payoff, which we're kind of saying in this Tampa Bay New England scenario, the payoff, because they only have one match game, whatever you want to say.
Until the Super Bowl, that is.
Right, until the Super Bowl. New England goes on a run because, they're not looking real good right now. But you get to book it. That's the thing. And I agree with you. That's what AEW has done pretty well lately. In their history even, they've done it fairly well. I mean, they've had some clunkers. They've had some stretches where you're like, I'm not feeling it right now. They had some of those Friday night dynamites because of the NBA playoffs that were like, I don't know, felt like placeholders, but man, nothing feels placeholder right now. Every show.
Well, can we go jump back to Rampage? And I want your take on this.
Freestyle.
Yeah. So for the longest time, like I was like not like getting the connection with Dan Lambert and American Top Team, and then he becomes kind of the manager de facto for Men of the Year. But then they do what they do last week, and you got all these MMA guys in the ring with Hager and Jericho. And and Jericho gets that knee and gets bloodied. Where do you think that's going? Do you think we're going to get a Jericho Hager versus Velasquez and someone else tag at Full Gear, or what do you like? And do you care?
Yes and no. It's been a little weird I think Dan Lambert is great on the mic. I think and being the old curmudgeon who doesn't like the new ways, okay, I'm good with that. It's a little bit weird because I feel like Ethan Page and Scorpio Sky are two guys that don't need a mouthpiece. Like they both can talk just fine on their own. And I thought they had a really good, let's see, you haven't seen AEW yet, but they have a promo. That's not really spoiling anything. And I think they both, and Dan Lambert's involved too. I think all three of them handle themselves well, but the two guys show that it's not like they're bad, talkers, and which is usually when you put a manager with somebody is they need somebody to do their talking for them. That's not the case. And the MMA guys, it's been a little weird because like they're here 1 week, then they're not here 1 week, then they're here a week, then they're not a week. So that part's been a little bit weird, and it's never quite. Well, some of the people have been. Is Cain Velasquez been there? You mentioned him, so I don't think he's been there.
Or is it Junior Dos Santos?
Junior Dos Santos has been there.
Sorry.
And Jorge Masvidal is the one who hit the big knee, which looked great, by the way. I mean, that knee, it looked legit to me. So
I named Cain because Cain having that quick WWE run.
Like, right, he has a little bit of wrestling training.
Yeah, my default.
And he could become involved at some point. I don't know if he has connections to Top Team or not. Paige Van Zandt was there, which Paige Van Zandt had been rumored to be connected to WWE for about the last 5 years, that someday she wanted to do something with them. So I think that didn't even get as much play as I thought it would because there was so much of that. Now look, AEW is the one who actually gets her into the ring and she, hits Jericho with some body shots. The only thing I don't love about that is it's not like Jericho's going to ever get payback for that. Like he's not going to knock out Paige Van Zandt. At least I don't think that's ever going to happen. I don't think it should. So it'd be a little different if Jericho had a female counterpart in the inner circle who maybe she would get some, she would come back for revenge against Paige Van Zandt down the road. But anyways, I think it could lead to some sort of that. I actually thought last week I was expecting Jake Hager to turn on Jericho and join the MMA guys and kind of go off on his own. I thought that would have made some sense, and it yet may happen. But this is more get Jericho off TV for a little bit because he's got the Fozzy tour. And I think we probably are headed to something in Full Gear. Maybe, though, it's Men of the Year versus Jericho and Hager again with the MMA guys, as lumberjacks or something like that. I think it depends on their contract statuses. Masvidal is contracted with the UFC, I believe. I don't see Dana White wanting him to do a pro wrestling match while he's contracted to the UFC, not because Dana White has anything against pro wrestling, but he doesn't want Masvidal to potentially get hurt. Masvidal's a huge money maker for the UFC right now, so he doesn't want him to potentially get hurt in a pro wrestling match, and then he loses, an attraction for the UFC. And I understand that. That's a business move. So I'm curious. Junior Dos Santos is not, I don't believe, with the UFC right now. Dos Santos was a killer for a while, 10 years ago. I don't know that matters to me as much. It's interesting to see him. I was a fan of Dos Santos back in the day, but so I don't know where it's going, and I'm not 100% sure if I care. But I like Dan Lambert as a heel. And I like that Lambert has also been willing to take a bump or two. Lance Archer laid him out. So it's good that he runs his mouth and he still gets his comeuppance too. And it's not just Men of the Year taking the beatings. I like Scorpio Sky a lot. I know you're very high on Scorpio Sky and have been for a long time. Ethan Page just doesn't click for me, and I don't know why. And we've talked about this before, but I did think his promo on Wednesday was good. So when you get a chance to see that, I'll be interested to hear your feelings on it. But in the ring, for me, Page has just never clicked. I definitely thought Josh Alexander was the better part of the North tag team or the Monster Mafia in the past. And I think career-wise right now, that's borne out. I think Josh Alexander is probably the next Impact World Champion. I think he beats Christian Cage here at Bound for Glory later in October. But that might be the first thing we've talked about in Impact Wrestling on this show in a long time.
I guess we need more freestyle shows. So
right.
That's how Impact gets added on. No.
Right. We don't even pick Impact pay-per-views because neither of us follow the product closely enough, unfortunately. I'd like to. I hear good things about Impact. I just don't have time, nor do I have access to it at this point.
That's what it comes down to, for sure. Well, so the next thing I think that's worth bringing up is, and I know neither of us have seen it, but it's kind of a bigger story of the week, is AEW's main event on Dynamite on Wednesday was the TNT title match, and Sammy Guevara unseats Miro, which is a pretty big upset when you think of how Miro has been built. Also, on the flip side, though, I love Sammy Guevara, and I know that his stock has always been high and has been rising. So this move, I'm eager to see how it plays out. Again, I'm speaking of it like knowing that it occurred, but not knowing the context in which it occurred. So that's kind of cool. And you're at that point where you're ready to watch that match. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've seen all of AEW up to they just came into the two just came into the ring basically.
Got it. And I thought it was worthy of noting when I got that spoiled for me after the fact. I was not very pleased. I learned about that without having watched it organically develop as I watched the show on DVR. But being that the show was in Rochester, it was a tribute to Brody Lee, the memory of Brody Lee being strong in his hometown there, AEW being there. The title that was important and that he was part of making, albeit very briefly, having that title switch there, I thought was very interesting. And I wonder what you think there.
Yeah, you and I talked about this just a little bit before we clicked record, and you'd mentioned that, and I get what you're saying, and I hadn't thought about that. I guess and maybe it would have been too cliche, but I guess I would have put the title on a Dark Order member if you were going to do that. Although I don't know Dark Order wise who's really been built up singles wise enough. Nobody is the answer to that, to be perfectly honest. They've been doing this dissension thing, and that maybe rectifies itself a little bit on Wednesday night. I don't know. We'll see. Not to spoil anything for you, Tom, that you haven't seen, but I don't think that's a huge spoiler. That the Dark Order obviously is featured prominently. There's a 16-man tag team match, which is a crazy number of people to have in a tag team match. But I guess I'm curious to see how it plays out too, because I all I know is that Sammy wins it. I don't know, does he win with a roll up? Does he win with and I don't want to know that until I watch it. I'm curious to see, because I feel like it was too soon to take the belt off of Miro. So will I get it from a TNT title switches in Rochester? Brody Lee is the forever TNT champion, or whatever they said last December when they did the memorial show to him. That I just kind of feel like it was too soon to take it off Miro. Now, maybe there's more to this. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Miro needs a little time off or something, or maybe there's not, and they just decided to go with it. I also don't feel like Sammy Guevara has been built up quite enough as a singles. I feel like it's been very start-stop with him.
It came out of left field here for sure. I agree.
Right, because all of a sudden it was Sammy wanted a shot at the title. Sammy got a shot. He won. Like, there was no, and again, I like Miro hasn't had a feud since really the thing with the best friends. Since he's been TNT champion, it's kind of been just destroy the challenger of the week. And I've been okay with that. But then I was hoping it would lead to someone like Kingston. We talked about it for the pay-per-view.
And that seemed to not have resolved itself. So the fact that we'd never got anything following up on All Out, and then this is the way they went. And then also, I think the important thing, and we stated this clearly, and it's obvious, AEW does a really good job of focusing on the value of wins and losses. So for Miro to take this loss here, that's significant in the big picture of the promotion.
Right. And I believe it's Miro's first singles loss. I don't think
I think you're right.
I think it's his first singles.
Crack research team always on it.
Right, that research team, crackpots. They've been freestyling since day one. But I think it's his first singles loss in AEW. I don't know. And so I'm curious to see how they follow up on it. Like I'm saying, I'm not sure about it right now. A, I haven't seen it play out, so I need to do that. And then B, AEW has earned from me the ability to say, okay, let me see how they play this out. And I still may not love what you did, i.e. Adam Page. Adam Page, decided to take time off because his wife was giving birth. I get it from a total family standpoint, 100%. That's what Adam Page should have done, 100%. I still don't love that they told the story the way they did. It turned out okay. They told a pretty good story with Christian Cage to get to that match. They made me care more about that match than I thought I would when it first got announced. So AEW's earned that right, that I'm interested to see how this plays out. I can still disagree with the point but go, okay, but I see what they were doing. And in the end, that worked. I still don't love that it started with this, but it worked in the end. So I'm willing to watch this play out. But yeah, Sammy, I like Sammy, and Sammy definitely makes sense as a TNT champion somewhere down the road. I just don't feel like they built him. And therein lies a problem, maybe. And I don't mean to jump off of the TNT title thing. So if there's more you want to say on that, Tom, we'll come back to it real quick.
The only thing I'll say is that was indeed Miro's first loss.
Okay.
I was able to buzz the research team, and they were able to be in my ear and let me know.
Oh, good. I'm glad one of them is awake this morning. Maybe one of my struggles with AEW is their roster is so good, but so large that there are people who just, okay, I feel like I've said this 100 times, but Andrade El Idolo, the guy's had like 2 matches, and he's been in the company for like 4 or 5, 6 months. Now, they tease something on Wednesday, so I think we're going to get another match finally. And I'm interested to see it, and I'm interested to see where it goes because of what happens. So, without spoiling, enjoy that when you see it. We can talk more about it on another episode. But how does the guy only have that many matches? Like, what's going on? He doesn't appear to be hurt.
Adam Cole's already had more matches than he will. And then as of tonight, Bryan Danielson will equal him in much less time in the promotion. Now, again, to say Andrade, Adam Cole, Bryan Danielson, not all on the same plane, that being said.
No, but they brought it. But Andrade's not far below them.
No, exactly.
And he could be on that plane if they've treated him that way backstage, but they haven't in the ring. And they haven't even made it like, if they made it like Andrade was like, look, these people don't deserve to see me, I work when I want to work, or something like that. If you give me a reason, I don't know, that annoys me. Maybe it's going to pick up, and maybe there's a reason, but at least the 2 matches that we've seen, I haven't seen anything physically that's made me think he has any sort of injury.
I'm glad you brought him up. Yeah, I'm glad you brought him up. I think there's another match with Pac coming up, and I think that happens where he gets the win without interference. And it just dawned on me, Sammy does not need this championship to be validated by any means. So, and again, I don't know that Miro does either. So there's 2 paths I could potentially see going as I fantasy armchair book here on this podcast. Miro gets the belt back in a rematch, which isn't always a guarantee, but could happen. Or Sammy loses to Andrade, and Andrade gets this title, and that helps raise his stock.
I could see that. And look, if Andrade and Pac then want to have a series of matches over the TNT title, sign me up. I'd be all right for that. Yeah. So I don't know. There's just things. I love AEW though, and the shows fly by. I think that's the other piece. Like, they don't feel like a chore to watch, and maybe it's that it's 2 hours, but sometimes SmackDown could feel like a chore. Although it's been pretty good lately. When I have been able to see it, I haven't watched it every week, but AEW shows do not feel like a chore. In fact, when I got to the point that I realized I was at the main event, it was last night watching. My wife had gone to bed, so I was watching a little bit of wrestling, trying to catch up, and I was like, they started running down the matches for Rampage and then next week on Dynamite, and we are getting that 8-man tag next week on Dynamite. I'll just tell you that that you've been predicting for quite a while with the Elite and Brian and Friends. That doesn't spoil anything. So
Brian and Friends, I love that.
Yeah, that's my new name for that group, Brian and Friends. Brian's buddies. But when they started running down the matches, I went, "Oh crap! Are we already at the main event? Wow, we are. Okay." So I love that about AEW. Yeah. What else should we talk about, Tom? Freestyle. I feel like we need like that record scratch noise, like wee wee.
Yeah,
I don't ever try to make that noise on this show.
I don't know. Nothing else is coming to the surface for me at the moment.
Let me spin a different way then. Unless something comes up, which squirrel all over the place if we want to.
I was trying to think, like, the easiest thing for me that I thought would come up would be like October pay-per-view memories, and like the word Halloween Havoc comes to mind, but nothing really jumps out for me when I think of Halloween Havoc, even though I've seen them, all of them at some point in my fandom. Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio is kind of like the seminal memory of when I think of Halloween Havoc. That's my go-to thought of their classic.
You mean it's not spin the wheel, make the deal?
I mean, that comes to mind too, but it's not the first thing. It's not the first thing.
Fair, very fair. Yeah, or the Halloween Phantom from Halloween Havoc, ravishing Rick Rude when he made his return to WCW, kind of in one of the worst masks that didn't conceal his identity at all because his big porn star mustache was sticking out under the mask.
I'll never forget being a big PWI reader, and every time I would go to the grocery store with my dad, I would always grab PWI, and every month when I could. And I remember very much like seeing the Chamber of Horrors match photos in that and going, "Oh my gosh, they had an electric chair and Abdullah the Butcher got fried." And like then actually seeing that on tape like a year or years later and being like, that did not live up to the hype at all. Like
no, because the switch fell down halfway through the match.
Precisely, yeah. So just
And Cactus Jack at one point, while he's waiting for them to put a switch and put Abdullah in the chair instead of whichever babyface Sting or somebody they were supposed to, and he's sitting there watching it all happen, like for the longest time on the cage, and then finally, well, he watches them put Abdullah in, and then he accidentally hits the switch, and I'm like, no. That was just, it didn't work. You're right. It did not work at all. I had another thought about Goofy. Oh, well, when you said PWI, you said PW and then you paused and said I. For whatever reason, my brain heard PN, and I thought you were going to say you were a big PN News fan from back in the early 90s. So Um, I actually enjoyed PN News for what he was. I mean, was he going to be a world champ? Of course not, but not everybody will be.
Well, and back to the record scratch. If we had that, in the post production, we'll have to add that in. That doesn't happen.
Absolutely. Our crackpot research / post production team, we'll get that in there for y'all. But PN News is a guy we need a wrestling figure of, to go back to one of our other loves. He was supposed to have a Galoob in the next line, and it didn't happen because the Galoob figures ended. But that would be a fun, the Fully Posable podcast that I listen to, Wrestling Figure Podcast, which if you love wrestling figures, folks, they're the guys. You got to listen to them. Fully Posable. They're available everywhere. They're great guys, and a fun podcast. But they often say that a character or a look or somebody's gear is very toyetic, and would look good, like Luchasaurus, for instance. Tom just got the Luchasaurus figure recently. I got it as well a couple of weeks ago. I mean, that's a toyetic thing. Like, you see it and you're like, yeah, that looks like it should be an action figure. You see Luchasaurus in the ring and you're like, he needs to be an action figure. PN News very much the same way, because of that colorful outfit and everything. Like, he should have an action figure somewhere. And I'm kind of surprised that one of the 87 companies that are doing Hasbro style figures hasn't signed PN News. Like Zombie Sailor or Cella or Nerd Clothing or insert other company here. There's apparently also a new company coming out with figures. I guess we're squirreling to figures here for a minute. That's going to do Remco style figures. I don't know if you ever had any of the Remcos back in the day, the AWA ones, Tom.
I did not.
Okay. I did. I had some. I don't have them anymore. They're long gone. But I had some. I think they were at my dad's. I don't think we had them at, like, we lived with my mom, but then we saw my dad on like weekends or different times. And for my memory is that we had them there with him. We had Abdullah the Butcher and Carlos Colon. And I think we had Mr. Electricity, Steve Regal, not Steven Regal, Steve Regal, different guy, and some others as well, Ric Flair. So apparently there's Greg Gagne actually is involved with the company that's going to do Remco style figures. So we'll see how that goes there. Legacy Worldwide, I think, was the company's name, which the Fully Posable podcast, when they announced it, immediately jumped to Prestige Worldwide from Step Brothers. And if they made boats and hose figures, that might be, really funny. But anyways, Tom, you got Luchasaurus recently, and I picked up the Santos Escobar and the Cody LJN style and some others. But you sent me a message yesterday. The WWE.com had their monthly reveal of some maybe updated look at figures. I don't think they necessarily had any new figures that we hadn't seen, but they had some updated prototypes and things. And the Goon was shown in package, and you said now seeing the pictures, you kind of see the appeal, I guess, of the Grab the Goon.
Yeah, that's it for sure. And again, when you see the San Diego Comic-Con releases, and kind of it gets you whet your appetite, if you will. But then, like yesterday, seeing it in package and out of package and posed with the hockey stick and whatnot, I'm like, okay, I get it now. I don't think I will ever go and grab it. I won't grab the Goon, as we've come to use this podcast to promote that hashtag Grab the Goon. It also inspired our good friend Annette. One of her fantasy football teams is named Grab the Goon.
Absolutely. So, I think she's listening. Somebody's listening right now. I'm guessing it might be Annette, but
yeah. So, but that figure looks cool, if nothing else. The figure actually that really jumped out in the last week that I saw got released that I thought was pretty sweet was the Damian Priest Elite. Yes. I don't know if you had a chance to take a look at that one.
I did, and I like when they first announced it. I feel like the first pictures I saw, he didn't have the jacket. It was just him and his wrestling tights, basically. And I thought, oh, that looks pretty cool. But the jacket really made it pop more. And I think that's one I'm probably going to have to order or look for, but probably just order. WB figures especially are so hit and miss out here. As far as what I find, I randomly run into things and then have ordered more online than anything, just because I tend not to randomly run into most of what I'm looking for. So, yeah, that's one I might have to pick up, because I like Priest as a character. And this is his first Elite. He did have a basic where he had his ribs taped, but I don't really buy basics. because I buy them more as collectibles and displays, and the elites are just they look cooler. I mean, they're made to. That's why they cost $20 instead of 10. So yeah, Damian Priest, I thought that one looked real sharp. Honestly, the pictures yesterday for the Dominic Mysterio, I probably won't pick up the Dominic, but super colorful. Definitely pops in the package. If you're a Dominic fan at all, I think it's a great first figure for him. I probably won't snag it because I'm not a big Dominic Mysterio fan. I think he's coming along okay. He's still got a ways to go for me. But I think it looked cool. I think the colors on it, really popped, and they did a nice job with that figure. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. It's not going to be too long, and the Unmatched Series 3 might be up for pre-order. Unmatched Series 2 just went up for pre-order, which has the Sting figure in it from AEW. Unmatched Series 3, though, is the Darby Allin LJN, and then the Dark Order. Brody Lee and Evil Uno and Stu Grayson and Anna Jay and Reynolds and Silver, I think, also are on that. Man, I want almost all of those. And I think we talked about that when they released those names. I definitely am getting the Brody Lee. That's 100% yes. I'm getting the Brody Lee. Oh, that's your dog. Okay.
Yeah, I've got a dog who's begging to go back outside. So okay. as we bring the freestyle session to a close, she'll be very thankful that I'll be able to let her out here soon.
The funny part was I heard the whine and I had this moment of like, is there a dog in my house? And I'm like, no, it's in your house.
That's how good our audio is.
That's right. We might have crackpot research. We might have post-production problems, but Tom's dog whining was so realistic that I thought that a dog that does not live in my house must have been in my house because we don't have a dog currently.
It's the ghost of the dogs of the past.
Right. I mean, we used to have a dog and she would whine occasionally, but I just had this moment of like, do I need to we don't have a dog. What am I going to let out? Like, what is going on here?
Oh, that's good. That's good.
But yeah, anyways, Tom, anything else you want to bring up? Like I said, this has just kind of been our freestyle. We figured we had a week where there just wasn't as much big news to talk about. We didn't have any picks. In fact, we won't have picks for a couple of weeks now to make, although we'll have to, because that pay-per-view is on a Thursday, we'll probably make those in 2 weeks on the 15th with whatever they bother to announce by then. Because goodness knows they'll wait and announce half of the card on the Monday Night Raw before Crown Jewel.
Yeah, unfortunately. No, nothing else jumps to mind today. I think that when we come back next week, ideally, I think, the fallout from the draft and seeing how the rosters shake out, lots of stuff with AEW, I'll finish Dynamite Rampage with Danielson and Jackson tonight, and then another live Dynamite in Philly next week. Those are going to be big, kind of the big needle movers in terms of pro wrestling right now.
And I got to say, this weekend, I mean, you've got the draft starting tonight on SmackDown. You've got Danielson and Jackson. You've got a no DQ women's match coming up on Rampage as well. You'll see that get set up. And then they had announced a week ago, hair versus hair, Orange Cassidy versus Jack Evans. So we're going to get to see Jack Evans as a bald man because let's be honest, Orange is winning that. You got to figure they're going to hair versus hair, Orange Cassidy versus Matt Hardy eventually. But Evans gets to be the fall guy here to begin. I think that's fairly clearly where it's headed. And then I have to admit, I'm hoping the Ring of Honor actually tapes this week because unfortunately my local Fox station that shows Ring of Honor, because baseball and or football games have run long, they just preempt Ring of Honor and don't seem to move it to anywhere. If they do, YouTube TV doesn't pick up where it is. Because I've even recorded the shows for about 2 hours after, and it's what's listed, like Family Feud is on, which is annoying, to be perfectly honest. But I have seen that through Honor Club, even though I'm not now a paying member of Honor Club anymore, the TV show still shows up on Monday on the Honor Club app, so I can still watch it Monday, which is good. And it's available on Fight. But I'm really looking forward this weekend. The Briscoes versus Alex Zane and Taylor Rust is a match on Ring of Honor TV this weekend. I think that could be a really fun tag team match. Yeah. Zane and Rust is kind of a strange pairing, but that's okay. I don't know that this is going to be a pairing going forward, but an interesting way to continue those two guys. I hope they both stick around Ring of Honor. And the Briscoes have been on fire, but they're obviously coming off a big loss at Death Before Dishonor as well. So I think that could be a fun match on Ring of Honor TV this weekend.
I agree. I'm looking forward to it as well.
Well, this has been fun, just kind of freestyling and having a conversation. We hope you've enjoyed it. We'll probably be back to our little more scheduled, what do I want to say, lineup or rundown next week. But
the formal agenda.
The formal agenda returns next week, right? But for now, everybody be safe. Enjoy some wrestling this weekend. Enjoy some football. Go Badgers, go Bears. I just had to get that in there, Tom.
I'm going to let that lie.
So Tom is also rooting for the Badgers and Bears. Let the record show. Everybody have a great week. Stay safe, and we will talk to you again next week. Thanks for joining us here on Two Spot Monkeys Live. See ya.